a bit of myself. My name is Bosun Olanrewaju, and I'm a software developer. I currently work for Portal in Germany as a remote developer, and also the CTO of Cash Estate. So today's session is not really about me. It's about you guys, and it's a privilege or it's an honor to be here while you guys sit in front of me to listen to what I'm about to say. So basically, I always say this to people that I mentor, and that is that no man is an island of knowledge. So as you guys are here to learn from me, I am also here to learn from what you guys are doing and you are up to. So like it's been stated that if you have any question, you guys can just drop it in the chat and I will try as much as possible to address it the best way I can. And if by any means, part of what I say today, you guys find anything not clear, you can just like call my attention to it. So this is supposed to be a single session on data modeling. But while we were in this conversation related to how we're going to handle this session, something came up and I got to know that some of you guys are having issues with understanding some JavaScript concepts. So I asked that I really want to know how and where exactly the challenges are. So I got a feedback, and 1 second, let me see. Yes. So the things that actually came back from the feedback that I got was that some of you guys don't understand clearly what DOM means or how you can leverage on the power that DOM provides. Then some of you really want to understand what are classes, objects, and prototypes, methods, etc. In JavaScript. Basically, that is more like the object-oriented paradigm part of JavaScript. As you might have been taught that JavaScript is like it doesn't favor one paradigm over another. So it's basically, you can use it to write objects-oriented programming and functional programming as well. So it's part of the things I want to talk about today would be to address or to explain further what classes are, what functions are, what methods are, and what objects are. And yeah, that's basically just giving you guys a rundown of what today's session is going to be on. Is there any question? Do you guys have any question if I delve into it? No, okay. So my bad, I could have just come up with some kind of slides or presentation to actually give you guys like a visual representation of whatever I want to say today. But unfortunately, I had a long day and I'm pretty tired already, but then I already scheduled it today and I have to like do it. And plus it gives me joy when I do this. So pardon me for that. Next session will be different, I promise. So let's start with objects in JavaScript. I want someone to tell me what they understand, like your best understanding or definition of objects in JavaScript or generally in programming. I'm throwing this question to everybody in the class. So if you have answer, you can just, Or if you want to answer, you can just signify. Yeah.
Hi, good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon, Adegberiga.
Yeah, so my understanding of objects is very much like a variable, except that it has or it can contain many characteristics or properties.
Properties, that's the word.
Basically, properties. Yeah, I think that's my own understanding of an object.
Yeah, that's correct. But you know that there are two types of, I can say there are two types of objects in JavaScript, basically, um, depending on how they are created. So the object that you just explained falls under the first part that uses the curly braces. There you can just declare your object and assign it to a variable, and you can use it as it is. So like you just said, objects are more like a variable, but they are mutable in the sense that they take in properties. And the properties can be of any other type, whether it's a string, a Boolean, an integer, or a function. So a function in an object is called a method. So I know that I saw that there is one of the things that came back in the feedback is that you guys want to understand what are methods. So methods are basically functions, but because it sits right inside an object, so they kind of like dictate or represent an action in an object. So in programming sense, an object is literally what it's called. Object is a thing that you bring to life. So when you say, okay, I think I have an idea of what I'm going to do right now. So I'm going to share my screen right now and run us through some things. Let me see. Repo.it. Sorry, I don't know what's wrong with Zoom. It's just, yeah, here. Right. So I can just do new repo here, and we want Node.js is better. So here we are. We wait for this guy to load. Okay. Now, so if you want to declare a variable, an object as a variable right now, you can just do var my object. Sorry. My object equals this. You can say maybe First name. Okay, let me just say, let me give it a name, say tile. So first name is Adetayo and last name is James. Then we can say age. I'm pretty sure you guys are familiar with all of this. And then let me say full name. This is the first name. This is the last name. So here we have tile. So if we say console.log tile the first name, we get the first name, which is a property of tile, right? So if you want to get the full name, you say tile dot full name. So basically, what this syntax is doing is that it's creating a new object, automatically creating a new object and assigning values to the properties, adding properties to the objects. So it's the same thing as doing variable Kemi equals new object, and you say Kemi dot first name. Kemi dot first name equals Oluwakemi, and then Kemi dot last name equals to Abdul. So it's the same thing. We tend to use this pattern because it's readable, it's clear, and it's concise as well. And so basically, it just gives us that, okay, this object that we are creating right now has this property. So we are doing the same thing in one single line, like declaring it and then assigning properties to it at the same time. So this type of objects is similar to this guy in PHP, associative arrays in PHP, hashes in Ruby, I think dictionaries and maps. So it has different ways that people, other programming languages represent these objects. In JavaScript, it's represented like this. So you can see people can interchangeably call it maps or dictionary. Is the same thing. And at the context of JavaScript is the same thing. So the other type of objects that that I want us to focus on next is the constructor objects, where we use function and then we now create objects from that function. So that one is more, it's very, very close to classes in other programming languages. I know you guys might have known that in JavaScript, there's nothing like class. We don't really have classes in JavaScript. It's just constructor functions. So let me tell you what I mean by that. for instance, in Ruby, you do class, say my module, and then you start declaring properties inside this class. Then you can come down here and do new my module. Right. In JavaScript, we really don't have the concept of class. I know that when you use TypeScript, TypeScript gives you this, this keyword that it compiles down to constructor function. So in constructor function, you just create a normal function. So if you want to write maybe tire and chemi, constructor function gives us the flexibility of having a blueprint, more like, yeah, it's the best word to use is a blueprint. A blueprint that we want to use to start creating our objects from. When we use this method, we can only create one type of tile here because we are creating and assigning properties to it, and these properties belong to tile alone. When you use this other method, we are creating objects called chemi and assigning properties to it. This constructor function gives us the opportunity to create a blueprint that we can now use to create other objects from it. So now let us have let's have a function called person. Person equals function, then it takes in first name, last name, and age. And then it assigns it to the object that you're about to create. I'm going to explain this in a little bit. First name is the last name equals last name. And then this dot age equals to age. Then I can do, okay. Now with this, I can say I want to create a new version of tile from this blueprint that I have here. So I can say that var tile2 equals new person, and then passing all the values that I want to assign to the properties. First name is Adetayo, and then the last name is James, and then age is say 12 now. So what this does is that I can do, let me log this guy out. Okay, comment this guy out. So I can do console.log tile2 dot first name. If I run this now, it will return the value of first name, which is Adetayo. Oops, my bad. You see, it logs this guy out. How is he able to do it? So the keyword here is this. This is a keyword in JavaScript, and it's not a variable. You can't change the value, and it only points to the object itself. So in the context of this function right now, in the context of this function, this guy here, this keyword, has no value. It gets its value when we create an object out of it. So when we instantiate it, that is when this now points to the variable, the object we are creating from the constructor. So we are able to do this. So if I want to reproduce this full name function here, I can just copy and paste here, and then modify this. This dot full name is the same thing. So I can do, if we try to print out full name now, it should give us the full name. Yeah. Okay, so because it's a function, we have to like invoke it as a function. Adebayo James. And yeah, so that is how we create objects in JavaScript. So the misconception or the misunderstanding or that part that is not clear to you about functions, classes, methods, I hope I've been able to address them in this little demonstration that I did here. If you have any question, please do let me know. Let me see. I think there is one person. Okay, no question so far.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, so you spoke about constructors and classes. What of prototype?
Yeah, I'm still going to get to that.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm taking it one step at a time.
All right, great.
All right, so when I tried to access the full name earlier, it gave us, it print out the function here, which means that it just stringify this function and return function for us, because you can't print out a function like this. So JavaScript provides us with what they call accessors. Accessors are getters and setters function inside an object. With these accessors, we are able to access properties in an object. So either we want to hide some properties that we don't want people, or we don't want external like code of programs that are not within the same context with the function or the object. We don't want them to access it. So JavaScript provides us with these accessors that we can use to get properties and set values to properties. So I want to rewrite this as a getter now. So if I do get, what name should we give it now? Just hit name. I hope the syntax is correct. So we can still do this. Let me see. This is not correct. Get function. Oh no. I hardly use this, so let me see. Function, object, accessor. My user internet is slow this morning. Yeah. There must be something missing here. All right. Gotcha. Here. Okay. So to define accessor for, oh yeah, I know why this one is not working. This syntax only works for this other object type when we do something like this, as we've seen there. But for objects that are created from constructor function, we use JavaScript provides us with some methods that we can use to assign properties and get properties from functions. And an example, I can look that up here. Constructors. And done. Okay. Assign. Damn. So for this using this getter here, if I remove this comment here and I do tire.name, we have access to it without calling it as a function. That is what this getters function, what they do. So if I run this guy now and comment out, console out line 13, it's going to give us what? Yeah, I did tire James. I'm wondering where this Abdul is coming from. Anybody has any idea where this Abdul might be coming from? I know it's Kemi's last name, but where is it coming from? Any idea? No. Okay. So actually it's supposed to return undefined because console.log is not supposed to return anything. So I'm not sure where this Abdul is coming from. Anyway, so this is how you do how you use getters in objects. So you want to use, for example, you want to use setters, you want to set like a value for a property in an object using the setup method. This is how you do it. So you just create maybe set, what name should I give this? Value is not a good name anyways. So let me just say set my first name. Value. And you can do this dot first name equals value. So if just before printing out Tayo's name here, if I do Tayo dot my first name equals Akintayo now. If I run this, it should print out Akintayo James and not Adetayo James. Yeah. So with this, we are able to modify properties value using the accessors. And then we are able to get them using the get method here. So for instance, if you want to hide, say you want to hide the first name, don't want users to have access to the first name of an object or a property, you just use the getter method to present whatever you want to present to the user while preventing them from accessing the other method. So I will go straight to the prototype. And sincerely, in JavaScript, everything is prototype. Right from object itself up to array, all the primitive data types that we have, the strings, the array, they are all prototypes. So when you do variable x equals 2, what you are doing is you are creating an object from the number prototype. So instead of doing, this is equivalent to doing variable x equals new number, and then passing the value to it 2. So line 35 and 36 are pretty the same thing. And what this guy is doing is using number.prototype. So everything in JavaScript is prototype. So what prototype does is that it lets us set properties or functions to constructor functions. So for instance, this person now, when we instantiate this person as tile 2, it only has all these properties. It doesn't have any other one. Now, if I want to add tiles, how will I say it now? Tiles height. I can do tile.height equals 25. And this will be the value for tile. Let me say, if I print out tile here, let me comment out this and print out tile 2. Still coming back to you. Yeah, oh, tile 2 rather. So we have height here added to tile, but this value is only added to tile, not to the blueprint. So I will just try to explain this. It's like if you have a blueprint for animals, let us play God. Like you want to create the animal kingdom, and you have a blueprint, the class, the constructor function that you use to create animals. And you, okay, this animal is a mammal, has 4 legs, has 2 eyes. So this is the class, the blueprint. So if you now want to create different animals from these objects using this blueprint, you now say that, okay, I want to create dog. I create dog. But then I want to add tail to dog, or I want to add tail to the animal blueprint. If you do dog, which is the instance of the animal blueprint, and you add that dog.tail equals true, that property that you are adding to dog only exists for dog. If you create a new animal from the animal blueprint, that animal will not have that new property. Now, to add new properties to the blueprint, that is where prototype comes in. That is where prototype comes in. So if, let me do this. So we have Tayo here. Let me create a new version of Kemi to new person. And then Adekemi Oshibajo, age is 25, no, 26. So console.log Kemi 2. So the first person, Tayo, is an instance of person, and it has all these 5 attributes or properties. The second person is Kemi, which is an instance of person, and it has these 4 properties. You can see that height is missing for Kemi, and it's because we only added height to Tayo's instance. Now, before we do that, before we create these objects, let me make use of the prototype guy and add weights. Let's say default, or no, let me just say race. African American. So if I print this guy out again, it should add them to it. Okay, why is this not working? Person the prototype dot race. It should default to this. What could be the problem here? Not sure what is going on here, but let me try this. Person the prototype dot get race equals this the function. I'm sorry. Equals function return American. Okay. So let me do console.log Tayo2.race. Yep. Console.log Kemi.getRace. Yeah. So this is only printing out the what's the word again? the predefined properties for the object. This Kemi gets its own from the initial constructor, while Tayo has the initial constructor properties and the one that was assigned to it directly. So if I print this guy out now, Kemi.raise is not a function. Interesting. Yep. I see. So African American got printed for this person, and now it says, oh, Kemi too. It's like, what's going on? Talking about bad variable name. So there we are. So for tire race, because we assign this to the prototype this, and we give it with assign race property to the person's prototype, and we default it to this. Every instance of this person will have this value, same as this. So I can still access Kemi2.race here and tire to get race. Okay, so we have answers here. Come on. Why do I always miss these two at the back of Kemi? Okay, so we have the values here. Now, someone just asked a question right now that all these theories, all these function this, method that, object this, object that, how do they fit in together, play parts in building an application? So it's just like, so the key part in building an application is solving problem. So when you want to build an application, there's always a domain problem that you want to provide a solution for. Whether it's to present values to a user in some way, whether to calculate something and provide a solution, a result in some way. All of these things that we're learning, all of these play parts. And the good thing about having different ways of doing things is, one, speed, two, and second is ease of understanding. So when you're building an application, and because you always use it becomes part of you when you're working, and you just know that, okay, if you want to solve a problem, you want to do this, you need to create a function. If you want to, for instance, there's an application I'm currently working on. We need to calculate returns. Okay, let me just use that. It's a very good example. So we need to calculate, it's an investment application. So people invest money, and we need to calculate returns based on their investments. And this money that they've put into their portfolio, they just don't put it one time and expect return at a certain period. So it's an ongoing funding thing. You can put in money today, put in money tomorrow, put in money next week. And at each time, at each point, we want to calculate the exact returns that you have on your investments. So there's an algorithm, there's a formula for doing that. I'm not going to go into that formula. The formula is just going to give us like, okay, this is how to calculate each user's returns from inputs, from their funding. Now, you now want to look at how do you put that solution into programming. So the first thing you need to do is you want to create like a constructor function that handles returns for each user. So each user has an identifier, probably their ID, to identify them. So you pick the user's information from the database. So you know that, oh, this user, I have this information about this user. I have their name, their email, the date they joined, amount funded so far. Once you have that value, then you can pass it to your constructor function. Create an instance, say returns for user A, and then you can start creating functions, different functions to handle different things, different calculations. So for me, or generally programming, you use functions to perform actions. And yeah, to perform actions, say get name, calculate returns, build data, escape this string. So functions are mostly to perform actions. So you pass in, it takes in arguments, and then it prints out something out, it returns something. Which reminds me, one of the feedback that I got was that how to write complex functions. How to write complex functions. What's the best way to do that now? Okay, I think I have one very good example in one code that I have here. 1 second, please. Let me quickly fetch that out. It's one of the projects I'm currently working for my employer, and I had to I created a separate module. I won't say a module, it's more like a small service that handles browser history. Let me just pull that class out now. Okay. Okay, we are going to do some refactoring here today. And I'm going to like explain every single line. And the reason why I did this, I called it browser location.js. Okay. I pulled it out from a React app that I worked on. So because React and then all the ES6 helps us, like we can write classes like this. In JavaScript, deep down JavaScript doesn't have class. So there's a transpiler that transpile or compiles this code down to proper JavaScript functions. So let us convert this into a proper constructor function. Are we ready? Yeah. So we say variable browser location equals function this. And I'm just going to close you here. Okay, it takes in history. Okay, why not just do it this way? All right. So it takes in history, assigns it here, and then this is default browser function. Here is a function, is a constructor function as well. So we are instantiating it, creating a new instance, and then assigning it to this object here. So basically what this constructor is going to do is that whenever I do new browser location service and I don't pass anything to it here, see, I don't pass anything to it here. What it does is that it's going to call this function, sets history to none or undefined. Once it gets here, it wants to create a new property called history that it will assign to the instance. Let me just say instance here. So basically, instance is the same thing as object. When you say instance of a class or instance of an object, yeah, instance is the same thing as the object you are creating from a class or from a constructor function. So when you do instance here, this is pointing to instance. So when I do this.history, that means that I want to create a property on instance and set the value of the history that I'm passing to it. Now that I am not passing anything, this syntax here means that if the compiler cannot resolve the value of this history, then it will use this one. Basically, this is supposed to come from a module like that. Variable create browser history equals require history. This is like npm packages, I think. Yeah. So basically what we're doing is that if this is null or undefined, ignore it and use this guy. An expanded form of this line will be doing something like this. If no history, right? If history, do this dot history equals history, else this dot history equals create browser history. So what we have on line 4 is the same thing as what we have line 5 to 9. So that's that for this history. And then location search params means that I want to set this property on instance and then assign the value that I get from this, calling this guy into it. Okay, this is actually, yep. This dot history points to this history because history has a location property that has search property. I'm trying to access the search property on this, pass it to this guy to get an object that I'm now storing inside this guy. So in instance, I can do instance dot history to get histories. I can do instance dot location params. Right. Now, that is not the reason why I created this service. I created this service because I wanted to use it to simplify some things. One of the problems that we had then was that the behavior was to modify, to remove a query parameter. Let me see if we have an example here. Oh no. So can you guys still see my screen?
Yes, yes.
All right. So you know what query parameters are, right? In URLs. So for instance, if you pay attention to this address bar, if I have, say, name equals Bimbo and age equals 5 and city equals Lagos. So all these things after the question mark, they are called query parameters. So the problem that I created that service for to solve was that we want to have possibility of removing a particular property from this query. For instance, if I want to remove age, and then maybe add something else and refresh the page. So typically what I would do on a normal day would be to access the history from React and then start pull down all this value, convert them to objects, take out properties, add new properties, then build it back into a string like this, and then append it back to the URL and give it back to the browser. That's a long process. It's a long thing. So what this service is going to do is that it's going to, this particular line here, this URL search params here, takes in this value here and builds an object out of it. And it also provides us with methods that we can use to add and remove parameters directly from the object that it creates. And when we are done with the state of the object that we want, we can now convert it back into the string that we want. So maybe I should just, very good place to get JavaScript documentation is Mozilla the Documentation Network, well, MDN, yeah. So here, developer.mozilla.org website. So it takes in this and it provides us with all this method. We can delete, we can append, we can iterate over them and all of this. So that's where I'm trying to leverage on. So the key to using all of these things is that you want to solve a problem and you know that you have a lot of solutions that you can combine together to solve a bigger problem. So now we're breaking all the problems down into chunks and now providing little solutions to them. This line 5 right here is solving a problem of converting all this query here, the query parameters that we have in here, it's going to take them as strings. And then it converts them to objects that I can interact with methods that I can use to manipulate or change the underlying structure of the objects. Now, I added this function. So we can proceed and do using prototype this to do this, to add this function or method equals to function this. So what this line is going to do is that, like I said, URL search parameter provides us with functions. Part of it is this set method or set function that I can use to set a new value, a new attribute on this query parameter. So I'm now taking advantage of that method to add new parameter to the URL. But instead of getting the URL back, I'm trying to return this, which is the instance that we created initially. Reason I'm doing this is that it is easier for me to chain functions. So when you return this, that means that you are returning the object itself, so that you can still access, so the result of what you return, you can still access all other properties that belong to that object from it. So let me add this particular guy here, reload. No, let me add navigate to. I will show you how we can chain these methods together now. Cross function. Okay. So, like I said, this add parameter is just to add a new key value to the string. And then it returns the instance, which is the object. And now this is another prototype we want to add now, which says navigate to. Navigate to is just to tell you that, okay, now that we have new URL, please take us to that URL. So what it does is that it picks the path name from the current location, and then it picks the parameter that we have from either the one we are passing to it or the one that we already built, convert it to string, and then push to it. So the best way to do this is to maybe remove all these dependencies on okay, so this location could use window. We can use the browser here, and then instead of doing this dot push, I can just do window.location dot href equals path name plus search. So I can take this guy out so it doesn't confuse us. I hope you're all familiar with this guy. This is the native browser's location property that lets us redirect to a new URL. So if I come here now and I do window.location, I'm not sure you guys can see what I'm typing. Location.href. So if you do like this, it's going to get the current browser location for us. But if we set it now, let me set it to https google.com. It should redirect us to Google. Yep, here we are. So that's the native browser's Windows objects. So what I'm saying is that pick the path name from what is coming here, and then attach the search that we built from this new guy here. Now, what we can do is after instantiating this guy, I can call instance.addParameter, call it new param. It takes a string. So new param, and then the value is say 25. Then I can do dot navigate to. Then give it a part, say https google.com. So I'm able to chain this method here to what this guy is returning, because when I declare this function, I'm returning the object itself. So it gives me the like, okay, I have access to all the properties that the object has. So I can do every other thing. But if you look at this now, I can't chain anything to it again. All these options that you see here, they are just keywords in this code. It's because this guy is not returning anything, it's void. So, like I said, this here is to provide a solution to a problem. The problem is to find a way of like modifying such URL parameter query parameters, and then modify it, and at the same time, we take them and redirect them to a new URL. To do that out of the box, we have to like write plenty code. But then I'm leveraging on this function, this constructor function here that the browser provides, JavaScript actually provides, and then I'm able to create new service that now solves the problem in a way that I want it. And I am able to use it and use it anywhere within the application. So anywhere I want to change a value of a parameter, or I want to delete a parameter and then take them to a new page, I just create an instance, import the file, create an instance from here, and then just do this within the code. So if any user accessing this page and interacting with the browser, when it gets to this point that it needs to redirect them, it should just do it out of the box. So this is how you use everything that you've been learning. You put them to use directly in your day-to-day programming activity. I think that actually answers the question. Do we have any other question?
Any other question, please?
Okay, so Ima Omokiti says that how can I access an array in an object? So it depends. Like we said earlier in this, where's the file? Oh, yeah. In this file, like if you declare an object like this, object is just key value pairs, and the key is, they're called properties, and the value is anything that you add to it. So that question, I really don't get it, because if you do, for instance, let me just create a new file. Say something.js, and you say variable object equals this. If you say array, that means you want to assign it array of values like this. So if you want to access this array, you just do, either you do object.array here. Where are we? Why is it running this one? Okay, so let me say, so if you want to access any property in an object, you can do it this way. This is one way to do it. Another way to do it is you use the box notation. So the first one is called dot notation. Object dot, the name of the key of the property. The other one is object notation. Box notation, which takes in box, and then you can pass in the property name as a string. Right. So no, why is it running this?
Yes, when it's done, I will mute everybody. So we'll just tell him thank you. We'll also say thank you to you. Okay, I'll just unmute my own mic. I'll say thank you. I will clap.
Yeah. So Ikem Namso says that. So can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So trying to address the questions here. So Ikem says that prototypes are available to every function or every instance of that object. Yes, it does. So once you instantiate that object, everything that you add to that key, to that constructor function through prototype, every instance of that prototype, of that function will have access to that property. Whether it's a function property or it's any of the primitive data types, string, integer, or Boolean or array, yeah, it will have access to it. So with the introduction of ES6 staff for class usage, I believe the function prototype thing can be overlooked, right? That's correct. That's correct. Because it's just let it faster. Because for instance, EX6, with EX6, you don't have to write the function keyword again. You can just use the arrow function, and then you are done. So with that, it lets you write shorter code and clearer, and then it conforms with other programming languages like Ruby, Java, etc. So that's what EX is trying to achieve. And now, yeah, they're actually putting a lot of work, because when JavaScript started as a basic browser scripting language. You want to make something animate on your browser, use JavaScript. Now, JavaScript is more than that. You can use JavaScript to build an entire application from the front to the back. Yeah, so I don't know why this is, why is it not printing from this guy? So I want us to see that this is how you access. Okay, oh, index.js, damn it. Can I rename? Oh no, I can't. Oopsie. So I want us to see what I am doing here. So yeah, you can see that line 55 and 57 returns the same thing. So I'm not sure. Maybe there's you actually mean different thing, because that's how I can interpret your question. You said that how can you access an array in an object? So this is an object and this is an array. As long as the array is the value of any property, you can always access the array through the property. If you are talking about the other one, which is array of objects, and then that will mean that if you say variable array and you have this means that you're instantiating a new array and you want to pass in values, and you say, okay, this is an object, set name equals Femi Adebayo, and then you can pass in the next person's name equals James Obi. So this is an array of objects now, and you can access each array because each item in an array is just what it is. So the item here, array is like a list of different data types. It can contain any data type. It's actually a finite list of any data type. And so you can store objects in an array, store string in an array, say hello, you can store integer, and array won't complain. It doesn't care, because it's just assigning location for each of these items. It sees them as items and assigns locations to them. So to this array now, it has in its position number 0 is 0 index. So the first one starts as 0. So index 0, it has this object there. At index 1, it has this object there. At index 2, it has this string, and index 3, it has this string. If you want to access them, maybe you can definitely access, if you want to access them in individually, you can do array and just provide the position of the item you want to access. If you say 2, it's going to print out hello, because hello sits in position number 2. You see, if you want to print out the name of the guy in position number 0, the object in position number 0, you do array 0 Then, because once you do array 0, it will return whatever is inside. So this value here, this guy becomes an object, and you can access it anyhow you want to access it using the same method we have up here. Whether you want to use the dot notation, which will give you the name, or you want to use the box notation, which you can do this way. It will print out the same thing. Okay. Ima, I think I've answered your question. If not, you can just. Oh yeah, okay. I just see that you explained further that it's an API, but there is an array of values. So your access array, anyhow you want to access it. Whether you want to access them individually, like I said, with passing their position index. They call them index, which is the position. Or if you want to access all the information at once, at a go, then you can either do an iteration, because it's an enumerable. You can iterate over the items. So when you do array dots for each, and you pass in function like this. So for each means that you want to go through each of the item one by one. So it will pass in the item to you at each iteration. So the first time it goes through the iteration, the first item in item index 0, it will return it here. So if you do console.log item here, let me comment out this and comment out this. It will print out each member of this array. You can see it. This one is in position 0, and this is position 1, this is 2 and 3. That's how you access each of the items there. Another way, if you are sure of the content of the array, if you know that it's either array or strings and you want to concatenate them together, there is a function on an array where you can use to join them together. But we can't join this because these are objects. If you convert object to a string, it's going to return objects, as in literally objects as a string, and print it out. You can see that in action here. If I say console.log array.join, maybe separate them with this, and you run, you see, it's going to give us like this, which is an object, thing like, okay, it's object, and this one's object, then we have hello and D3. So another question from Ikem Namso says, can you please explain public and private fields? So basically in ES5 JavaScript, there is basically not properties, not public or private. They are all public. But since ES6 came in TypeScript as well, we now have private properties and public properties. So now private properties or private fields are fields that belongs to that object, but it's inside it, you can't access it. Like it's like an internal thing that you know that you have, like the object possesses. You can use it within the object, but you can't have access to it because it's not visible. An example would be like if I use human body as an example, your heart is there, is beating. You can feel it. Your other body part is using it because it's pumping blood to them. They can access it. If anything happens now, your brain knows how to reach the heart to do, like if you feel, if you're excited right now or you are scared, your heart starts beating fast. It's because your brain processes something and it sends signals to the heart. Your body understands that it has a property called the art. But outside your physical form, your art, nobody can access it. You can't see it. So that's a private field. Public fields are the things that you can access when you instantiate a class or a blueprint. So when you instantiate a blueprint or a class, there are properties that you have access to. There is another one called protected properties. So protected properties are properties that they are like in between public and private. So, like I said, private sits within the class itself. Nobody outside the class has access to it. Within the class, you can reference it. This dot, the name of the property, yes, you have access to it within the class itself. But after instantiating that class, you can't access that property outside. A public field, you can access it outside. A protected field, you can't access it outside, but you can access it inside a child class. So if a class is inheriting that other class that has that protected field, the protected field cannot be accessed outside, but any class that is inheriting from that class, from that main class, will have access to that property within the class itself. So that's it. Any other question? There's one more part that I want to touch before we go, and that is the giant, how do I call it? What's that word again? I don't want to scare you guys. Well, it's called DOM, D-O-M. Documents Object Model. So basically what that is just like a wrapper around HTML documents. So the way browser represents HTML is internally to the browser, it's different to the way we see it. So we see tags when you create, let me show, for example, let me just use this guy. What we see in code is this is HTML here. But then there is this thing called DOM that the browser uses to access each of these nodes. Because each of these things that you see here, they are nodes. They are called nodes. You can call them as branches on the tree. You can call them as branches on the tree. So this is the roots. Yeah, the root is this HTML, and it has nested children, which is head, body, and then inside head has nested children as well. So it's like that. Call it tree. Now, JavaScript, the browser wraps this entire HTML code around this thing called DOM. And what this guy does is that it provides us with JavaScript properties that we can use to access each node of these HTML documents. So I can access each node of these documents and I can interact with it. I can fetch, or let me say get attributes from each node, and I can set attributes on each node, and I can also perform events or actions on each node. So the DOM provides us with that. So if I want to get this content now, I can just access the DOM object and then say that get this element for me. So I call it node, you can call it elements, it's the same thing, element node. So get this element for me, passing the selector the selector, how you want it to select that element for you. Once you pass in that selector to it, it will grab that element for you and give you the object representing that particular node. And then you now have properties on that instance, like get attributes, like set style, and etc. So that is what DOM is a giant object of a giant object representing the HTML documents that the browser is displaying to you. That's it. I'm not sure if that is clear. Any questions or questions? Please ask them. Ask your questions. No question is silly or stupid.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, so if you're using class and you're using class extends, can you use prototype on a class that you're extending to another class?
If you're using class, why do you want to use prototype again? That's what class does for you.
Oh, okay. So when you use class, you don't need to use prototype.
No, you don't need prototype, because when you use class, where's that code again? The initial code I copied from my class. Okay, Control C. Oh yeah. So remember what I did in this browser location? I transformed an existing class into prototype. So this is basically what class will do for you when you do class. So let me just bring it back here. So you can see constructor here. So when you use class provides you this function here. So you can do constructor, which is like declaring a constructor function that gets called. So you're telling that when this guy gets transpiled down to the ES5 JavaScript, this constructor will go into being this from line 3 to 6, right? And then each of these functions or methods that you have in here will be transpiled into prototype. So if you're using a class, you are better off writing your function directly inside a class like this, because they're still going to get transpiled down to prototype. It's easier because you know that one giant class, you create your constructor, and then you create all your prototype here, prototype functions here, straight up. And if you want to assign properties, you assign properties from inside the constructor. Easy peasy. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. But I have another little question.
Go ahead.
So, is it possible to create another class from a class created from a blueprint? Basically, what I'm saying is, you made an example earlier. Say you created a dog class from a parent animal class. So
I said create a dog instance, which is an object.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, an object. Is it possible to create maybe I don't know, Rottweiler instance from that dog instance?
Yes. It is possible. It is possible. So all you need to do is what you're trying to say is called prototypal inheritance. Let me see, so I don't give you a wrong definition. Prototypal inheritance. Yeah. So you now create a new object from that of the dog instance. Let me see. I know there is a particular one that is really, really explanatory that I've seen before. So new FO. Trying to see which one actually does this thing for me. No. Nah, that's not very explanatory. Not the way I want it. So it's just like creating, okay, yeah, which is what we just did here now. So, sorry, what we are looking at here right now. So, animal equals blah, 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 and then let rabbit equals jumps true, then rabbit.proto equals animal. So, what it does is that it inherits, once you do rabbit.proto animal, it inherits whatever properties is inside animal and adds it into rabbit. So this explains it better here. Animal is a separate object on its own, right? Rabbit is a separate object on its own. If you do rabbit.proto equals animal, if you now, at that point, rabbit inherits it from animal. Right. So what that means is that when you create an object from a constructor function, it has these properties this property inside it. It's called proto, that defines the blueprints that it comes from. So when you now create a new object from that, say if you create a new object from, say, the main blueprint, you can now assign that new object, that's the Rottweiler one now, you can assign the proto to the dog that we created earlier. So which means that all the properties that dog has, Rottweiler will now inherit them. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so is this, can you do this again and again and again, or is there limitations, or how?
There is no limitation. I've tried, you know, when you're especially when you're debugging in Javascript in the browser, there are times that you want to look at what's going on, you want to look at the structure of one object, and now you print it out to the console, and you now start going deep into it. I've not actually tried. I don't think I've gone further or deeper than 5 or 6 levels. But you see that inside a proto constructor, you see another constructor, you see another constructor going down like that. So it's kind of like there is no level. As long as the inheritance is just there, yeah, it keeps inheriting it. Yeah. So maybe I should just share this link with you guys so you guys can go through it and then read further. So any other, wow. Someone has gone to dig my background for me. Thank you, Mr. Olaoluwa. I've been Mrs. Olaoluwa. What the question? This is more like a career related question. Okay, so so it was pretty easy for me, and the reason it was easy was that right before I gained my admission into university, I've always had this flair for programming. I started programming even way before I gained my admission, maybe 2-3 years before I gained my admission. I started with basic PHP using I actually built my first website with Microsoft Word. Yeah, you guys can laugh. Microsoft Word, and then I transitioned into Fireworks from Microsoft. Then I started using Dreamweaver, etc. So yeah, before I get my admission. So I already knew at that point that I can only make it in life through programming or through computers, right? Generally. Like if I do anything else, I might not be successful. I'm not saying I'm successful yet, but there's always milestones to reach. So so it was easy for me, very, very easy. Right before then, in fact, in my school form, JAM form, I picked computer science and physics. But then, you know how it happens with Nigerian factor, I didn't get into computer science department, and they gave me mathematics. But I had a chance to cross when I was in 100 level, because in Lautech, everybody in 100 level did do the same thing. Everybody, we all go through the same courses on 100 level. So you have the chance to cross departments when you're moving to 200 level. I had the chance, but something reaffirms that mathematics is the right course for me. And what's that thing? When we were in 100 level, there was this project that we did in GNS, and they give us topic to go and come up with write-ups and then present it and defend it. So the group I was assigned to, the topic they gave us was the role of mathematics in telecommunication. And you know, 100 level students, we were just playing about it. But then I noticed that all other groups they were making it, they were moving forward. They already typed, like they came up with all the content, everything is so solid. And our own group, we were just there doing being mediocre about the whole thing. So, and I'll talk to one of my friends then that, guy, let us do this thing ourselves. So I had this encyclopedia on my laptop at that time. So I just picked up my encyclopedia and I started doing research, relationship between mathematics and computing, mathematics and computer science and telecommunication as a whole. That was what actually now opened my eyes to why mathematics is really, really important when it comes to computer science. And yeah, so I just decided to stay put in mathematics. And I had the plan that when I finished mathematics, my first degree, I would do my second degree in computer science, or at least one advanced computer course or study. But then here we are, fast forward how many years now? Yeah, I can say that the mathematics background that I had actually helped me in logic and reasoning, nothing else. But these things, it's something you learn to do when you work on projects. You want to see the the work I don't think I have access to it anymore. The Microsoft Word website. I don't think I have access to it anymore. I trash all those things in. They should not come and spoil my career. Yeah. So, any other question related to programming, whether it's programming, career, getting a job, getting hired? No, I don't want to talk about that one. I'm not a good person to discuss that. I'm not the best person in the position to discuss that.
So I'm just curious, is there any difference in the syntaxes for React for web and React Native?
Good question. No, It's just basic JavaScript. But it's just that the libraries that you use, the tags that you use are quite different. You know, in normal React, because you are building for the web, you mostly use web-related tags like image, IMG will still work, div will work. But when it comes to React Native has its own, it provides its own tag and element, I would say, that you can use to create elements on the mobile app. So it's basically the same thing, the same structure. You create class, you create constructor, and then you start creating your content. It's the same thing. So no, there's no difference, just JavaScript. Is it only Adegboyega that designed this class? You people should ask questions. At least we have 50. Should I start calling people's names? Then if you don't have any more questions, then I think we can call it a day. And I hope I've been able to address all the challenges and concerns that you guys have regarding JavaScript and programming as a whole. Then if maybe after this call, you guys maybe questions came up, you can always like shoot me an email. What's the name?
Sorry, I have one last question.
Go ahead, ask.
So basically, there really is no reason to use prototypes anymore currently, considering you have a class function with ES6.
Yeah, there is really no reason to use prototype function anymore.
Okay, so there's no special what do I say, special handling or whatever that you might need to do that would require.
No, I don't see any. I can't even remember the last time I used prototype. Maybe that was in 2015, I remember. And I was working with Podbots, one of their JavaScripts file like that. We used prototype in it. That was the last time. Ever since TypeScript came, I've always written my JavaScript code well on the back end in TypeScript, and then the front end are mostly React, Angular. So they both use you can use TypeScript for those as well. But for React, basic React, it uses class ES6 basically, and Babel will transpile it down to proper JavaScript.
I have one other question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I know there are two ways of declaring a component in React. There's the class component and the function component. And I know if you want to use states and lifecycle, you have to use the class component. But is there any downside to using a class component even when you are not using a state or lifecycle, any of those other additions?
I think yes, there is. Because when you use a class component, that means that you are automatically assigning all the attributes that belongs to that class, the component's blueprint now, that you want to inherit from, you're extending. That means that you want to have access to all the properties that belongs to that class in your own components, whereas you're not going to use them. So you're kind of like bloating up your application. So by the time that component gets transpiled down into proper JavaScript, it will have a bunch of code inside it that you're not using. So it's better, more performant, when you know that it's a stateless component. Just use function directly. It's better like that because it's pure function. It takes in something and returns something. Simple. No extra sugar.
Okay, thank you. But also, so I've been wondering this for a long time. Does the line of code you have in your application determine how heavy it will be?
Of course. Yes. Each character that you write translates to a byte in the computer memory. That's why that when you build your app for production, it's always minified. They call something minification. So it will remove all spaces. It will, all the variable names that you create is going to rename them into single characters. That is to reduce the size of the resulting bundle. So yes, the line of code that you write determines the size of the application. But you know, now that computers are more powerful right now, it's only when you have a very big application that it gets really, it gets to the point where you have to like start looking at how you optimize your code. But all these small projects that we are doing, don't think you need to worry yourself about the number of lines of code. I think what you need to do more is clarity. Let your code be clear, right? So you don't need to add, like they say that a good code doesn't need comments. I'm of that opinion too. I don't write comments in my code. And it's because the code itself should be self-explanatory. So clarity is one. And when you want to make yourself clear when you're writing your code, it means that you have to write more, maybe more lines than when you want to be concise. I've not been charging my laptop. Okay. Battery is about to go down now. Might drop off anytime. So, is React strictly for SPA or MPA or both? Well, basically, if you look at it, it's just SPA. Basically, if it's front-end rendered, is SPA. SPA means a single page application, means that it only renders one single file, which is the index.js. Every other thing is rendered inside that index.js. So it's a single page. It handles all the routing, everything right there. But then when React is used, it's rendered from the server. That means that the server compiles the page and returns HTML content for that particular page. Then you can say that React is just more or less like every other JavaScript framework that is served, or HTML file that is served from the backend. But then it still has its specs in terms of like it provides us with the virtual DOM and instance rendering. It's only when you change the route, when you try to access a different route, that it now goes back to the backend to re-render the entire thing, if it needs to. Is React okay? Is there need for worry when using SPA for large projects? No, it depends. So whether you decide to run server-side rendering or not, it depends on your use case. It depends on what the exact thing you want to do or you want to achieve. For instance, if you want to focus, if your application requires search engine optimization, not even search engine optimization, more like, yeah, if you want to submit your application to Google for optimization purposes, you know, when robots, Google bots, when they scrape or index your site, they only see the index page. They don't see any other part. So that is where running server-side rendering comes in play, because it lets you it lets you render the page from the server in HTML. So when the Google bot is trying to access the site, they see content. That's the only advantage using server-side rendering. Every other part, you are good with single page application. I think that's it. My laptop is probably going to go off right now. I'm trying to charge it. The charger is just messing up. I really didn't think this call will go this long. When is it advisable? React is not SEO optimized. Hi.
Okay, all right then. Thank you very much for this session. We're very, very grateful. So please let me know when you're ready to round up. We don't want your battery to die without saying thank you or saying goodbyes.
Yeah, I'm rounding up already.
Okay, thanks. All right.
So I want to just encourage you guys to keep going, keep pushing. You are really, really close to that not really breaking point. I would say the turning point, right? Yeah. Where you now start sitting in one corner and start commanding your clients that no, it's not going to work that way. This is how it's going to work, and this is what it's going to cost. And if you're the type that, like me, that just enjoy building stuff, yeah, just go ahead and start building things. Yeah, so I wish, well, there's still going to be another session coming on data modeling. And yeah, this is not goodbye. It's just talk to you soon, kind of goodbye.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you very much, Bosun. We're so grateful. Thank you for your time. And we hope to have you again for the data modeling guest session. Thanks a lot. So we're going to give you, it's called a round of applause and also say thank you. All right. Okay. So let's go. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Bosun. Enjoy the rest of the day. Bye-bye and talk to you soon.
Yeah. Bye. Bye.